Virginia. So you started Asia's first gender lens venture capital investment fund. So can you explain what exactly that means and your thesis behind starting this fund?
Absolutely. Teja Ventures believes in leveraging technology to invest in the she economy. I started Teja because I simply believe that the female consumer, or what we call Generation W, is the biggest arbitrage opportunity of our generation. And the reason why I think that, people think that the she economy is milk bottles or cosmetics. But actually, women are multiple markets in one. They consume for themselves and their households, and they control approximately 80% of global discretionary spending. That market is worth almost 20 trillion globally, or at least the Harvard Business Review tells me that. And that's bigger than the economies of India and China combined. But yet, people see gender as a limitation and not an opportunity, and I wanted to change that.
So tell me about that as women being the largest arbitrage opportunity. There are some studies showing as well that women actually raise less venture capital, but they actually generate larger returns. So what exactly do you mean by that?
So think about it. Women control 80% of global discretionary spending. But I think PitchBook's latest data shows us that women are allocated about less than 3% of global venture capital. So what does that actually translate into? And we've been seeing this, play out, I think in recent times. Women consumers feel massively actually underserved, and you can see that in terms of the new wave of products and platforms and consumption patterns which are actually emerging. A lot of them spearheaded actually by female entrepreneurs. I think we're 20 years into the new millennium. What we see is actually women coming to the forefront of business, society, and politics, and that's shaping, the consumption world we live in, but also society at large.
And right, this she economy that you describe it as is not just milk products and makeup. What are those biggest categories where you see the opportunity to have the greatest financial return?
So, the material that I have, identifies, verticals as large as food, and food is for everyone. But because women are, for example, in charge of, buying for their household. So, for example, women are often first adopters in healthy food sort of vertical, and there is a global trend towards that. For example, financial services is another huge thing. Right now we're seeing the largest handover of wealth from one generation to another, to millennials and also to women. And many women now in charge of sort of managing their family wealth are actually saying that wealth managers, traditional wealth managers, who are been male mostly, and also all products don't serve their needs anymore, or their risks appetites. So these are just, for example, two examples. But in the news recently, we had ClassPass become a unicorn, and that very much also caters to majority female consumer. And
within your portfolio, what are you most excited about in terms of its opportunity to really become a mass market play?
For example, something we've invested in China is mental health, artificial intelligence technology. So basically using voice biomarkers, to basically detect the state of your mental health. Now, the majority of the mental health market actually is in stress, anxiety, depression, whether that's young adults, children, people, in highly sort of stressful sort of jobs. But when we looked at the application of this technology, even though the technology is obviously for everybody, we noticed that some of the greatest applications of this technology would be in safety, would be in healthcare, would be in education, and sales. And this, again, it's a female-dominated sort of marketplace.
And you travel around the world, not just in China, but Southeast Asia and beyond, to look at investments, early-stage investments in particular. So where does China stand in terms of developing these types of consumer products, particularly for women?
Yeah, I think China was a great game changer in terms of like my mindset. I've been here the last 7 years. I worked on the One Belt One Road, but I also happened to witness China at a time where this big technology boom, when social media and social networks were taking off, in a big way, starting from 2013. What I've also seen in the last few years is basically new innovative sort of platforms and technology coming out of China. For example, like the global phenomenon of TikTok. Yeah. So some examples which I've seen in the Chinese market, for example, is Xiaohongshu or Red, a platform which is, I think, 90% under 30 and majority women as well. And it basically started off as a forum where you could post, and share with your friends, reviews on beauty products, and then it moved into e-commerce. And that's one of the big trends that we're seeing in the she economy. New forms of what we call new retail or new forms of consumption. So content-driven commerce, and not just somebody going to like a normal website and just clicking on listings. So that's an example of how we see China leading sort of global technology and business models.
And you also started Lean in China in 2013, and that's now expanded to more than 100,000 members all across China. So what are some of the biggest professional challenges that you find your members face, and how has that really changed over the past 5 years or so?
The data is actually really interesting. When we first started Lean in China, one of the main reasons for that is because we realized women lacked confidence, they lacked social networks, and they lacked approachable role models. Now, 7 years later, I can't believe it's almost 7 years later, a lot of these, these issues have actually been addressed. And now, what we see a lot in terms of the data that we publish in our Women, Work and Happiness annual paper is that women are actually talking about what self-actualization mean. When we ask them, what does happiness mean to you, they talk about realizing their own goals, their own definition of success. And that's not just marriage, work, or family, but actually having more options to achieve their goals. Entrepreneurship, for example, is one. Looking for new forms of consumption and new experiences is another.